Hello, good afternoon, class. Hope I'm audible. We'll start the session in a minute. If you have any questions related to what we've talked about or what we've discussed so far, please share the questions in the chat box so we can address them later in the class. And we'll be discussing today post-approval changes for regulatory maintenance of drug products, drug medical devices, etc. And we'll be concluding this executive diploma program with the same. So, if you have any questions, please share them in the chat box so that I can address them. Also, is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, Priyanshi, it is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so today we are going to talk about post-approval changes. And this, since this is going to be a final session, you need to understand that we'll be revisiting the idea that regulatory approval is not the end of product's journey. Instead, approval marks the beginning of an ongoing cycle in which the dossier must remain accurate and the product must consistently meet the regulatory expectations. Right? So, our job is not just to submit the dossier and get the approval, but what happens afterwards as well. Once the product is in the market, it's there's a post-market surveillance that needs to happen in order to make sure that the product is safe and effective throughout its life cycle. Okay. So, after approval, the regulatory team works consistently and continuously with the quality assurance team of the product. Then there's manufacturing, supply chain, and pharmacovigilance to ensure that the approved product quality, safety, labeling, and compliance are maintained throughout its marketing life. Okay. If there are any changes that needs to be introduced during sorry, if there are any changes that needs to be approved, that needs to be inculcated in the product's database after it gets approval to be marketed, then that needs to be addressed, that needs to be inculcated in the dossier. So every change that happens after the product has received its approval for marketing, those so sorry. Okay, coming back to update each of that topic individually in the session. So first we'll be talking about the primary changes, and lastly we'll talk about processes case and better. Okay. Refer Okay, just give me a second. I'll change my settings so that my voice is better. Okay, so am I audible clearly? Right, thank you. Okay, let's start again with the definition of what post-approval changes are. So, post-approval changes basically refer to modifications in a product or a process. It's not just related to the product, but also the process that's been used or followed to manufacture the product. Okay, after initial regulatory approval. So, to ensure that continued compliance with safety, efficacy, and quality standards is maintained throughout the products or the process life cycle. Okay. I hope the definition of what post approval changes is clear to everyone. Next is the importance of the post approval changes. So, there are many practical reasons why companies must implement changes after a product is approved, right? Sometimes there's demand for a product, sometimes the demand of a product increases, and the manufacturer must scale up the production, which requires, equipment, upgrades, batch size changes, or even new manufacturing sites. Uh, Apart from that, companies can also introduce process efficiencies to lower cost, improve the yield of the product, or reduce waste. Okay. In some cases, suppliers of raw materials or packaging may change, requiring the company to qualify new vendors and demonstrate that the new material maintains the same product quality. Sometimes modernization initiatives are taken, such as introducing process analytical technology or continuous manufacturing, which may require regulators to evolve new process protocols, etc. So, post approval changes are needed to support all these changes that are that are done after the product has been marketed and gets the approval. So, regulatory maintenance is vital for first safeguarding public health that ensures that product continues to meet the established standards, adapting to new scientific knowledge and regulatory expectations over time. So, post-approval changes is another important segment of regulatory to make sure that the to safeguard the public health, right? There are also days when pharmacovigilance activities may detect new safety signals that require changes to the product label. So to introduce that, post approval changes is again very important. Apart from that, there's market expansion to new countries, which often triggers new packaging or artwork or local labeling requirements. So, the regulatory professional should be able to recognize what are the changes that needs to be introduced and how it can be submitted in the dossier. Okay. So, you should be able to recognize that each of these drivers carries a different level of regulatory impact and must be addressed accordingly. Okay, for example, like we talked, local labeling requirements. I've given you this example multiple times during our sessions, which involves your Brexit. So, after Brexit, the medicines that are being sold in UK needs the label to say UK, but those medicines are in the Europe. But before sold in the entire country. right? So addressed in the dose. Take for example, with the, this is how you product life cycle. The product first gets approval, then there are some changes. You go back to the FDA or the or and then you submit that variation in a so that the coming of post variations in the manufacturing processes, its integrity and quality assurance. The main reason why we are starting post approval changes is product that's reachable. Okay, it shouldn't be okay. Regulatory framework will understand the key concepts in the regulations and talk about regulatory landscape governing post-approval changes, emphasizing the significance of compliance, product safety, and critical role of regulatory maintenance in the industry. Okay, so these are few of the key regulations. The first one is your ICH Q12 guidelines. Then there's FDA guidelines and EMA requirements. Along with these, there's also a change control system which is put in place and ICHQ10 guidelines that need when you're talking about post-approval changes or post-market surveillance. Okay, so ICHQ12 guidelines will Q12 guidelines outlines a framework for post-approval changes, emphasizing the importance of maintaining product quality throughout its life cycle while enhancing compliance and innovation in pharmaceuticals, right? I will show you what ICH-Q12 guidelines look like. Just give me a second. See, I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So this is what your ICH Q12 guideline looks like. It talks about the technical and regulatory considerations for pharmaceutical product lifecycle management. So if you are into CMC, if you are into dossier compilation, approval, variation filing, you need to read the guideline to understand better of how a product lifecycle is being maintained and what are the technical and regulatory considerations required for the same. Okay, you can see this was adopted on November 20th, 2019, and this is the history of ICHQ12. These are the table of contents, the objective scope, regulatory tools and enablers, established conditions, categorization of post-approval CMC changes, which is very important topic to read through if you're entering regulatory as a career path. So all these, all everything related to post-approval CMC changes, post-approval change management protocol, PACMP, product lifecycle management, PLCM document, PQS and change management, etc. All needs to be studied thoroughly in order to understand how a change control system works for pharmaceutical products. Okay, like this objective says, this guideline provides a framework to facilitate the management of post-approval CMC change in a more predictable and efficient manner. Okay. It has also referenced all the other ICH guidelines that you need to read through in order to understand this guideline better. Okay, like you can see here, these are the categorization of post-approval CMC changes, Chapter 2. There are established conditions. Then there's product lifecycle management document. There's PQS and change management. There's a relationship between regulatory assessment and the inspection that's been conducted. There's a structured approach for frequent CMC post-approval changes. Then there's stability data approaches to support the evaluation of CMC changes. So all these data, all these tools helps in the post-approval cycle or the life cycle management of the drug product that's gotten the approval. Okay. This is categorization of the post-approval CMC changes. Some of them are prior approval, then there's notification. These are the established conditions. Identify how to identify the established conditions of manufacturing process. This is a flow chart for the same. Here it's written identification of established conditions for analytical procedures, etc. So when you read through this, there are a lot of definitions and guidelines on how to maintain certain things. For example, here we are talking about CTD section that contains established conditions. Okay, so for example, in 32S, we all know about the modules or the sections of module 3, right? So 32S talks about drug substance, wherein 32S1 uh, has some established conditions. These are the general list with all the notes related to the same. Okay, so you can read through this guideline to better understand what ICH-Q12 means. Okay, so I would suggest you all go through this ICH-Q12, ICH-Q10 to understand the how an efficient way. Control forms, we'll talk about these also, but let's go back to the slide share. Okay. Comes your FDA guidelines. The FDA provides regulatory guidance for post-approval changes, ensuring that manufacturers adhere to is your EMA requirements. I've only covered FDA for different regions. There are different guidelines and requirements. So you need to go to the regulatory body site and read about the requirements of that specific region or country. Okay, so for example, the European Medicine Agency EMA mandates comprehensive regulatory framework for post-approval changes, ensuring that company maintains high standards of quality and compliance throughout the product life cycle. Okay, so these are the critical parameters and critical terms that needs to be defined. Uh, just read through it once. So yes, a well-designed change control system starts when someone initiates change requires the proposed modification. Okay, so understand changes. So there are three categories of post-approval changes. So that's major classification. Okay, so regulators classify changes based on their potential impact on the product quality, safety, and efficacy. So there, like I said, there are three changes: minor, major, and sorry, minor, moderate, and major changes. Changes or risk modifications such as administrative updates or any typographical correction or small adjustment do not affect the manufacturing process or critical quality attributes, right? These usually require documentation, but needs to be submitted. Not any variations, how changes are being okay. Okay, so let's come back to process cycle. Okay, so let's start with the processes and documentation for post-approval changes. So the so when a post-approval changes needs regulatory approval, company must prepare a detailed submission. Okay, this includes an updated Module 2 summary explaining the rationale and the scientific justification for the change. Okay, we do not have to submit any regions remains equivalent to the pre-change product. Validation reports or updated analytical methods, stability studies, impurity profiles, or extractables and leachable assessments may be required depending on the nature of change. It's not like with
Hello, Priyanshi. Sorry to interrupt, but your voice is breaking in between.
okay, let me adjust my Wi-Fi once again.
Yeah.
Um, I hope the voice gets coming back to regulatory review again. which reports which provide evidence that it crucial for managing post-approval changes. This ensures timely submission and and the regulatory authority communication, which needs to be maintained in order in uh, to provide regular updates and transparent discussions to facilitate a smoother approval process, ensuring compliance with all the regulatory standards and maintaining product integrity. Okay, so regulatory authority communication between the stakeholders or the person managing the submissions needs to be very clear so that there is no confusion related to the post market or post approval changes. Okay. Then comes to the compliance challenges. So, navigating compliance challenges require proactive change planning and cross functional collaboration, ensuring robust documentation to support effective regulatory maintenance throughout the product life cycle. Okay. So, how to do that? So, regulatory maintenance uh, involves, okay, before we move with compliance challenges, I'll quickly show you what control change looks like and what are the other reports that needs to be submitted in order to maintain. So just a second. Okay, so as you can see, this is an example of a change control form. Okay, where you fill in the proposed changes here and the reason and justification for the changes and any reference or supporting data, if there's any, will be submitted here. And other details like the impact assessment by engineering utility, impact assessment by regulatory affairs, quality controls needs to be submitted here from environmental health safety, personal administration, others by quality assurance team. If the nature of the change is major or minor, if there are any comments from the quality assurance team, if there are any actions to be taken, all of those information will be filled in the change control and submitted to the regulatory body. Apart from the change control form, there's also a form called APQR. Okay, so this is your annual product quality review, which is again a very important document because blind. As you can see, the annual product quality review, these are all the data that is required before you submit APQR. Okay, the data related to product recall, any adverse event, product returns, process controls, CPPs, CQS, product investigations, etc., out of specifications, lab product testing, stability data, CAPAs, facility support systems, variations, marketing authorization variation, if a marketing authorization has been changed or transferred, any GMP observation or equipment qualification. All these data needs to be all to submit a annual product quality review. Okay, so how an annual product quality review is done You need way the review are by other departments like QA, QC, engineering department, site head. Okay, so this is how you submit a APQR report and how it's being reviewed, all the data required for APQR, and who is responsible for which step, right? So this is about your APQR. APQR also a very important document for regulatory maintenance, okay, for life cycle management of the product. Coming back to your slide share. Okay. Compliance changes we've done, then talk about the common pitfalls. So challenges, proactive planning, which because countries categorize and approve changes differently, they often face challenges when implementing a change globally. Okay, so a modification that is classified as minor in one country may require full approval in another. And also, approval timelines vary widely. So, regulatory teams must therefore plan global rollout strategies carefully. This may involve submitting first to key market, preparing country-specific annexes, maintaining comprehensive regulatory intelligence, and using RIMS tools to track the status of each variation across all countries. RIMS system is your regulatory information management system or database, which ensures effective regulatory maintenance practice. Okay. So you should understand that global harmonization is a strategic activity involving scientific, operational, and project management decisions. So with that, we'll move to the case study. So there was a product called Capstone. So the Capstone case was majorly because a new manufacturing site was introduced. So while determining Sorry. So, as you know that when you are adding a new manufacturing site, it represents a major change requiring prior approval in all the market. So, you should be able to identify the required data such as PQR, batch validation, comparability studies, stability commitments, analytical method transfers, and site master file updates. You need to prepare a global submission plan, decide on the sequence of filings, and create a risk mitigation plan to ensure supply is not disrupted. Okay, you will also have to provide a timeline showing that how technical activities, dossier preparations, and regulatory submissions and approval windows fit together. Okay, so again, the that is me concluding your post approval market changes and post approval changes. So continuous regulatory this the reason for this session was to understand the regulatory maintenance is a continuous process and is essential for ensuring product successes. So stay vigilant in compliance and leverage best practice for effective post approval change management system. I hope that you will reflect on all the set of skills that you've acquired during this course and have gained, including dossier writing and post-approval variation management, along with risk assessment and pharmacovigilance interface. and inspection readiness. So all of these will practically come to you when you are in the industry itself. No matter how much we talk about it, unless there's a practical training or the industrial training involved, um, you will only have theoretical and a little bit extra knowledge to that. But to get on the edge of everything, you will have to practically be involved to understand how the post market changes happen, how the post market approval gets done. So, yes, there's that. So, I hope we are all clear on the post market changes and the regulations, regulatory maintenance. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat box. And
Priyanshi. Right? Are there any questions? Okay, I don't see any more questions. So I think we can wrap up this session and this course. We will have a MCQ assessment maybe next week or the week after that. We'll update you on the groups and then we can close the course. If you guys have any doubts, please update in the group. We can always answer questions. And I think that is it. Thank you so much for joining this course. I hope this course was helpful to all of you, and we'll provide an update in the groups. Anything else, guys? And Priyanshi, thank you so much for giving up your time and taking this course. Thank you so much. Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, please, you're audible.
Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll be having a quick MCQ based assessment maybe next week or a week after that. We'll update you on the groups and thank you all for joining. I hope this course was helpful to all of you. If you guys want to share anything, please let us know in the groups, or if you have any doubts, please do let us know in the groups. Anything else, or else we can close this session.